The sun was rising behind Eagle Ridge, painting the sky with orange hues, as Lily, a 12-year-old girl with curly hair and curious eyes, played in the backyard. The simple wooden house, surrounded by leafy trees, sat on the edge of the village of Eagleville, a place where everyone knew each other, and the secrets of the forest had been respected for generations. Jack, Lily's father, worked on the porch sharpening his tools. A man of few words but great wisdom, he had inherited knowledge about the land and its mysteries from his own father. He watched his daughter affectionately, but his attentive eyes also monitored the sky and the movements of the wind. "It's going to rain later, sweetheart. Don't wander too far," he warned, looking up at clouds that hadn't even appeared yet. Lily smiled in response. She was used to her father's accurate predictions. He never got the weather wrong, as if he had an agreement with the clouds. "Spirit is restless today, Dad," the girl commented, pointing to the chestnut horse grazing near the fence. The animal, with gleaming coat and majestic bearing, constantly raised its head toward the ridge, ears alert, eyes fixed as if seeing something beyond the mountains. "He senses the changes," Jack replied thoughtfully. "Animals perceive what we've forgotten how to feel." Spirit's uneasiness wasn't normal. The horse, which had been with Lily since she was small, seemed different that morning. That was when a sudden wind swept across the yard, making the leaves dance in circles. The birds fell silent, and a dry crack split the air. Time seemed to slow down as the trunk of the old oak tree began to lean toward Lily. The girl froze, unable to move. It was then that Spirit bolted like lightning, his hooves causing an unusual vibration in the ground. Inexplicably, the tree changed its fall, as if pushed by an invisible force, landing just inches from Lily. "Sweetheart," shouted Jack, running to her and embracing her tightly. His experienced eyes scanned the ground around them, noticing circular marks where Spirit's hooves had touched. A shiver ran up his spine. "Grandmother Sarah needs to see this," he muttered, more to himself than to his daughter. Hours later, the village elder arrived at the house. Grandmother Sarah, with her white hair in a bun and numerous necklaces of seeds and stones, was respected by everyone. They said she could speak with the forest spirits and heal ailments that even city doctors couldn't understand. The old woman examined the marks on the ground, touching the earth with wrinkled fingers. She approached Spirit and gazed deeply into the animal's eyes as if silently conversing with him. "It wasn't a coincidence," she finally said, her grave voice carrying the weight of wisdom. "The ridge is sending a warning. The pact is in danger." "What pact, Grandmother Sarah?" asked Lily, curious. The elder smiled, placing her wrinkled hand on the girl's head. "The pact your ancestors made with the guardians of the ridge, little one. Many moons ago, when your family wasn't even a dream, an agreement was sealed between humans and the spirits of nature. They protect the ridge, and we respect it. But something is changing." Jack, who was listening attentively, furrowed his brow. "Does it have to do with that group that arrived in town? The ones talking about progress and development?" Grandmother Sarah nodded gravely, her eyes fixed on the distant ridge. "They don't understand what's at stake. Excavators and tractors are no match for the force that sleeps in the depths of the earth." That night, lying in her bed, Lily couldn't sleep. Through the window, she could see Spirit standing in the field, staring fixedly at the ridge, like a silent sentinel. It was then that the dream came, bringing images of a stone circle, mystical animals, and a call she didn't yet fully understand. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. At dawn, Lily woke with a start, her heart racing and her mind full of images from the dream. Without hesitation, she quickly dressed and ran to the stable. Spirit was already waiting, restless, as if he knew that day would be different. "You felt it too, didn't you?" she whispered, stroking the horse's muzzle. With an agility acquired from years of companionship, she mounted the animal without saddle or bridle. She had never needed these trappings with Spirit. It was as if they shared thoughts. They crossed the pasture slowly to avoid attracting Jack's attention, who was still asleep. The sun was barely rising on the horizon when they reached the edge of the forest. Lily felt a shiver run down her spine. She had never ventured so far alone, but something inside her said she needed to go on. Spirit advanced among the ancient trees, choosing paths Lily didn't know. The terrain gradually rose, revealing that they were entering Eagle Ridge. The vegetation grew denser, and the forest sounds more intense, like a natural symphony celebrating their arrival. "Where are you taking me, Spirit?" she asked, though she already expected no verbal answer. After what seemed like hours, they reached a circular clearing, illuminated by rays of sunlight penetrating between the tree leaves. In the center stood a circle of ancient stones covered with moss and engraved symbols that seemed to pulse with life. It was exactly like in the dream. Lily dismounted, cautiously approaching the stones. Her fingers touched the engraved symbols, feeling an energy that made her skin tingle. "They are the marks of the Guardians," said a voice behind her. Startled, Lily turned quickly. Grandmother Sarah was there, as if she had emerged from the air itself, her hands holding a staff of carved wood. How did you get here?" the girl stammered. "There are many paths to this place, little one. Some visible, others not so." "Much," replied the elder with an enigmatic smile. "Your horse brought you because the time has come. The Guardians are restless." As if responding to Grandmother Sarah's words, a call echoed from above the trees. A hawk with vibrant colors, larger and more intense than Lily had ever seen, landed on one of the stones. Its eyes shone with an intelligence that seemed almost human. "Sky, the guardian of the air," introduced Grandmother Sarah. A low growl came from the shadows of the forest, and a mountain lion of majestic bearing emerged with silent steps, its golden eyes fixed on Lily. "Luna, the guardian of the earth," continued the elder. Finally, sliding over the stones, appeared a serpent with shining scales, which raised itself, observing the girl with hypnotic eyes. "And River, the guardian of the waters." Lily remained motionless, not knowing whether to feel fear or admiration. "And Spirit?" she asked, looking at her horse, which remained calm in the presence of these impressive beings. "Spirit is the messenger, the link between worlds. He chose you, Lily, just as he chose your grandfather before." The girl's eyes widened. "My grandfather? But he never told me." "There are things that can only be understood when the time comes," interrupted Grandmother Sarah. "Your grandfather was the human guardian of the pact for many years. Now the responsibility passes to you." The elder approached the center of the circle, gesturing for Lily to follow. On the ground, between the stones, was a circular mark, similar to the one left by Spirit's hooves the day before. "What is the pact, Grandmother Sarah?" "Why me?" asked Lily, feeling the weight of a responsibility she didn't yet fully understand. Centuries ago, the first inhabitants of these lands sealed an agreement with the spirits of the ridge. They promised to protect nature in exchange for harmony and prosperity. The pact maintains the balance. Without it, the forces that sleep in the depths would awaken, bringing chaos. The elder looked directly into the girl's eyes, her expression more serious than ever. "You were chosen because you carry the blood of the ancient guardians, and because your heart is still pure enough to hear what most have forgotten." At that moment, the ground began to vibrate subtly, and the three animal guardians positioned themselves at specific points in the stone circle. Spirit neighed, restless. "What's happening?" asked Lily, alarmed. "It's a warning," replied Grandmother Sarah. Her gaze turned to the horizon beyond the trees. "Something is approaching the ridge, something that threatens the pact." An image appeared in Lily's mind. Men with huge machines, excavators tearing the earth, trees being felled, and something more, something hidden in the depths of the mountain, something that should not be disturbed. In the village of Eagleville, the noise of engines broke the usual tranquility of the central square. A convoy of black cars parked in front of the town hall, attracting the attention of residents who curiously gathered to see who was arriving. Jack, concerned about his daughter's disappearance that morning, paused his search when he noticed the commotion. Among the vehicles, a luxurious pickup truck stood out, from which stepped a tall man in an impeccable suit and dark glasses. Richard Blake, a businessman known throughout the region, smiled confidently while greeting the mayor, a short man with a thin mustache who seemed dazzled by the visitor's presence. Welcome to Eagleville, Mr. Blake. An honor to receive you in our humble town. The mayor spoke, almost stumbling over his words. The pleasure is mine, Mayor. I'm eager to present our project to the community. Believe me, we're going to transform this place, replied Richard, with a calculated smile. His eyes scanned the square, evaluating every detail like someone already planning changes. Jack approached discreetly, positioning himself where he could hear better. He knew this type of promise well. He had seen similar places transformed before. As we agreed, the public hearing will be tomorrow. Everyone is invited to learn about the Blake mining project, announced the mayor, addressing the gathered residents. Oh, unique opportunity for development in Eagleville. Excited murmurs ran through the crowd. For many, the word development meant jobs, money, prosperity. For Jack, however, it sounded like a warning. His eyes met those of Emma, the young local schoolteacher, who was also observing the scene with a concerned expression. Mining on Eagle Ridge. What will be the environmental impacts of this project? She questioned aloud, stepping forward. A brief silence fell over the square. Emma, with her 27 years, curly hair tied in a bun and determined eyes, was respected in the community. With a degree in biology, she had returned to her hometown to teach and preserve the local traditions she loved so much. Richard Blake didn't lose his composure. With an even broader smile, he addressed the young woman. An excellent question. Miss Emma Wilson, teacher at the municipal school. Miss Wilson, our project was developed with the most modern sustainability technologies. I promise that all details will be presented tomorrow. You'll be impressed. While the conversation continued far away in the sacred clearing, Lily was still processing Grandmother Sarah's revelations. The animal guardians remained alert, tense, as if sensing the threat materializing in the village. What can we do, Grandmother Sarah? Asked the girl, feeling small before the responsibility presented to her. The elder walked slowly around the stone circle, her fingers touching each symbol, with reverence. The pact needs to be renewed, Lily. Only then can we strengthen the protection of the ridge. How do you renew an ancestral pact? With the union of the elements, earth, water, fire, air, and spirit, explained Grandmother Sarah. Each guardian represents an element, and you, as the human guardian, represent the spirit. Spirit neighed, approaching. Grandmother Sarah continued. But there's something else we need. Her sacred crystal, guarded for generations by your family, without you knowing its true purpose. Lily's eyes brightened with recognition. Grandpa's blue stone. He always said it was a family treasure, but never explained why. After he passed, my father kept it in a box. Exactly. That crystal is the key to the pact, the physical link between worlds. We need it for the renewal ritual, which must be performed on the next full moon. On the way back home, Lily absorbed everything she had learned. The forest seemed more alive now, each sound, each movement of the leaves carrying meanings she hadn't perceived before. Spirit followed with a steady pace, as if he too was more aware of his mission. As they reached the edge of the village, they saw the unusual activity in the central square. The luxurious cars stood out, as did the man in the suit who gestured, while speaking to the gathered residents. Who are they, Grandmother Sarah? Asked Lily. The elder's expression grew somber. The threat that the guardians sensed. Men who see value only in what they can extract from the earth. Do they want to harm the ridge? Not out of malice, little one. Out of ignorance. They don't know what rests in the depths, what the pact protects. At that moment, Jack spotted his daughter and ran toward her, relief and concern mixed on his face. Lily, where have you been? I looked everywhere. She was with me, Jack, intervened Grandmother Sarah, her presence immediately calming the man. It was necessary. Jack observed the elder and then looked at his daughter, noticing something different in her eyes, an understanding that wasn't there before. He nodded silently. We need to talk, he said, serious, about these men from the mining company and about your grandfather's blue crystal. Rain fell in heavy drops on the roof of the Thompson house. Inside, around the solid wood table that Jack himself had built, were gathered he, Lily, Grandmother Sarah, and, to the girl's surprise, the teacher, Emma. On the table, a wooden box, carved with symbols that Lily now recognized as similar to those of the stone circle. Jack opened it carefully, revealing a blue crystal the size of a fist, which seemed to contain small, luminous whirlpools inside. I never fully understood what this was, Jack confessed, observing the crystal. My father said it was a family heirloom, something we should protect at all costs, but he never explained why. Grandmother Sarah extended her wrinkled hand, hovering it over the crystal without touching it. Because even he didn't know the whole truth, Jack. The knowledge was lost over time, divided into parts to protect the secret. What secret? Asked Emma, adjusting her glasses as she leaned forward to better observe the stone. Lily looked at the teacher, curious about her presence. As if reading her thoughts, Jack explained, Emma isn't just our teacher, sweetheart. Her family is also part of the Ridge's history. Her grandfather was the village healer, Grandmother Sarah's partner in the old days. And she shares the same guardian blood as you, little one, completed the elder, smiling at Emma. The young teacher nodded. That's why I returned to Eagleville after graduating. I always felt something calling me back, something important I should do here. A thunderclap echoed in the distance, making the light flicker. Spirit whinnied in the stable, restless. The crystal is the key to the pact, continued Grandmother Sarah, returning to the main subject. It was created by the ancient guardians to channel the Ridge's energy and keep the forces that inhabit its depths dormant. What forces are those? Asked Lily, feeling a shiver run down her spine. The elder sighed, her eyes lost in ancient memories. Long before men came to these lands, powerful beings inhabited the world. When humanity began to spread, these beings retreated to deep places away from curious eyes. Some, however, did not accept sharing their domain. One of them, particularly powerful, rests beneath Eagle Ridge. A monster? Asked Lily, eyes wide. A titan, a force of nature, corrected Grandmother Sarah. Neither good nor bad, just wild and uncontrollable. The pact was sealed to keep it in deep sleep for the good of all. And what happens if it awakens? Questioned Emma, her academic voice betraying a hint of concern. Devastation, replied the elder simply. Not out of malice, but because its nature is too chaotic for our current world. Jack stood up, walking to the window to observe the rain. And these men from the mining company, with their excavations, could wake it up. Precisely, confirmed Grandmother Sarah. Tomorrow's hearing is just a formality. From the papers I saw at the town hall, they already have authorization to start work in a week. How can we stop them? Asked Lily, surprising everyone with her determination. We can't, not directly, replied Emma, thoughtful. Legally, if they have the environmental licenses. The law of men matters little to the law of nature, interrupted Grandmother Sarah. Our only option is to strengthen the pact before the excavations begin. On the next full moon we will perform the renewal ritual. The crystal on the table pulsed slightly, as if responding to the elder's words. And if we fail? Jack verbalized what everyone feared. A heavy silence settled in the room, broken only by the drumming of rain on the roof. Failure is not an option, finally replied Grandmother Sarah, with a seriousness that made Lily swallow hard. The girl touched the crystal with her fingertips and felt an immediate connection, as if the stone recognized her. Images appeared in her mind. The stone circle, the animal guardians, and something deeper, something that breathed slowly in the bowels of the mountain. It's getting more agitated, she murmured, quickly withdrawing her hand. Everyone looked at her in astonishment. You can feel it? Asked Grandmother Sarah with a note of surprise in her normally impassive voice. Lily nodded, still dazed by the intensity of the vision. It's as if it knows they're approaching, that they're going to disturb it. At that moment, a powerful flash illuminated the entire room, followed almost instantly by a deafening thunderclap. The light went out completely, leaving them in dimness, illuminated only by the bluish light emanating from the crystal, now shining with its own intensity. Spirit whinnied again, louder and more urgently. Lily ran to the window and saw her horse in the yard, rearing under the torrential rain, his eyes fixed in the direction of the ridge. On the horizon, beyond the trees and the rain, A reddish glow pulsed on the mountainside. "They've already started," whispered Grandmother Sarah, also looking out the window. "Time is running out faster than we thought." The public hearing in the small Eagleville town hall was packed. Residents from all parts of the village crowded to hear the presentation from Blake Mining. On the improvised stage, Richard Blake, impeccable in his dark suit, smiled confidently, while his assistants prepared slides full of colorful graphs and impressive numbers. In the third row, Lily sat between her father and Emma. Grandmother Sarah had stayed home, claiming that her place was not in theaters of lies, but had asked them to carefully observe every detail. "Dear friends of Eagleville," began Richard, his voice amplified by the microphone echoing in the hall. "It is with immense pleasure that I present to you the New Era project, an enterprise that will completely transform this region." Images of modern buildings, well-equipped schools, and a state-of-the-art hospital appeared on the screen behind him, drawing admiring gasps from the audience. "Our geological survey has identified one of the country's largest niobium deposits on Eagle Ridge, an extremely rare and valuable mineral. With the responsible extraction we propose, Eagleville will become a national reference in sustainable mining." Jack exchanged significant glances with Emma, who was furiously taking notes in her notebook. As the presentation continued, full of promises of jobs and royalties for the municipality, Lily noticed something strange. One of the engineers on Richard's team, a middle-aged man with a graying beard, looked uncomfortable. Each time the businessman mentioned minimal environmental impact or cutting-edge technology, the man frowned, almost imperceptibly. When the time for questions came, Emma was the first to raise her hand. "Dr. Blake, your slides are impressive, but I didn't see any mention of studies on the underground aquifers of the ridge. We know the region is home to springs that supply 3 municipalities. How can you ensure they won't be affected?" Richard maintained his smile, although a slight tremor in his hand as he held the microphone betrayed his irritation. "Excellent question. Our technical team has conducted comprehensive studies and—" "Actually," interrupted the engineer with the graying beard, unexpectedly stepping forward, "the hydrological studies are still ongoing, Mr. Blake." A tense silence settled in. Richard shot a withering look at his subordinate, who held his gaze with surprising firmness. "Dr. Mitchell is correct, obviously," Richard recovered. "What I meant is that the preliminary studies indicate viability, and we will complete all analyses before the effective start of operations." The meeting continued with more questions, some critical but many hopeful about the promised jobs. Lily watched Dr. Mitchell attentively, who seemed increasingly uncomfortable. At the end of the hearing, as people dispersed, Lily tugged at the sleeve of her father and the teacher. "That man, the engineer, he knows something." Emma nodded. "I noticed that too. Let's try to talk to him before he leaves." They found Dr. Mitchell in the parking lot, apparently waiting alone while Richard's team was still saying goodbye to the local politicians. "Dr. Mitchell?" called Emma, approaching cautiously. "I'm Emma Wilson, teacher at the municipal school. We'd like to talk about the project, if you have a moment." The man adjusted his thin-framed glasses, studying the trio with a tired but perceptive look. "You're from the village, obviously," he said, his voice softer than they expected, "and you're not convinced by Blake's promises." It wasn't a question, but a statement. "Is there something we should know?" asked Jack directly. The engineer looked around, making sure they were alone, and lowered his voice. "The preliminary geological studies found anomalies in the ridge's structure, immense underground caverns, rock formations that don't follow, known patterns, and—" He hesitated, as if weighing how much he should reveal, and encouraged Emma. "Vibrations. Unexplainable, as if something very large was breathing in the depths." Lily felt a shiver run down her spine. "Do you believe in legends, Dr. Mitchell?" she suddenly asked. The engineer smiled, a sad and knowing smile. "I grew up in a Native American reservation in the north, girl. My grandmother was a medicine woman. I know there are more things between heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophy." "The excavations have already started, haven't they?" questioned Jack. "We saw lights on the ridge last night." Mitchell nodded, running his hand through his graying beard. Small, preliminary soundings. Blake doesn't wait for licenses when there's money at stake. And what we found, and he swallowed hard, is not just niobium. There's a type of blue crystal in the depths, something I've never seen before. Blake is obsessed with it, more than with the niobium itself. Lily, Jack, and Emma exchanged alarmed looks. "Could you show us exactly where they're excavating?" asked Emma. "It's important." "I can do better than that," replied the engineer, taking a small USB device from his pocket. "Here are all the coordinates, maps, and preliminary reports, including the readings of the strange vibrations." He handed the device to Emma, who quickly put it away. "Why are you helping us?" asked Jack, suspicious. "Because I know how to recognize when we're messing with forces we don't understand," replied Mitchell, his eyes fixed on the distant ridge. "And because I promised my grandmother that I would never be part of something that disrespected the spirits of the earth." A call echoed from the town hall building. It was Richard looking for his team. "I have to go," said Mitchell quickly. "Use this information wisely, and if you can, prevent what's coming. There's something in that mountain that shouldn't be awakened." As he walked away, Lily noticed that the sky, previously clear, was beginning to fill with dark clouds. On the horizon over Eagle Ridge, a whirlwind of birds flew in circles, like an omen. "We need to talk to Grandmother Sarah," she said, instinctively clutching the small fragment of blue crystal that the elder had given her to carry. "Time is running out." If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. Grandmother Sarah's house, located on the edge of the forest that led to the ridge, was a refuge of ancestral wisdom. Medicinal plants dried hanging from the beams, crystals and amulets adorned the walls, and the smell of herbs permeated the air. The elder listened attentively as Emma connected the USB device to her old but functional laptop. "Look at this," pointed the teacher, showing a three-dimensional map of the ridge. "The red markings are the points where they detected the blue crystal." Grandmother Sarah adjusted her reading glasses, leaning forward to see better. "They form a perfect circle," she murmured, tracing the outline with her wrinkled finger. "Exactly like the stone circle in the sacred clearing." Jack studied another document, furrowing his brow. "These seismic readings, they show an enormous cavity under the ridge. It looks like a central chamber connected by tunnels." "And the vibrations that Dr. Mitchell mentioned," added Emma, opening another file. "Look at this pattern. It's almost like a heartbeat," completed Lily, observing the undulations in the graph. The group fell silent for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of the revelation. Outside, the wind began to howl between the trees, and Spirit whinnied in the yard, restless. "The weather is changing," observed Grandmother Sarah, turning to the window. "Nature responds to its awakening." "Did you know about this, about these caverns and chambers?" asked Jack. The elder sighed deeply, her eyes revealing the weight of secrets kept for decades. "Partially. The ancients spoke of the heart of the mountain, but many details were lost over time. We knew the Titan slept in the depths, but we didn't know the extent of its dwelling." "How did Blake discover the crystals?" questioned Emma, closing the laptop. "It doesn't seem like a coincidence." "Because it isn't," replied Grandmother Sarah, moving to an old chest in a corner of the room. "There's more to this story than appears." The old woman opened the chest with a small key she carried on a cord around her neck. From inside she retrieved a book bound in leather worn by time. The pages, yellowed and fragile, contained drawings and notes in an ancient handwriting. "This diary belonged to my great-great-grandfather, one of the original guardians of the Pact," she explained, placing the book on the table. "He recorded much of what is now forgotten." Carefully turning the pages, she came to one that showed a detailed drawing of Eagle Ridge in cross-section, revealing the same chambers and tunnels that appeared in Blake's modern maps. "The blue crystals are fragments of the Titan itself," revealed the elder, pointing to notes beside the drawing. "When it entered hibernation, parts of its essence crystallized, forming a protective circle that keeps it dormant. They're like anchors of an enchantment." "And Blake is removing these anchors," concluded Lily, feeling a chill down her spine. "Grandmother, Sarah nodded gravely. Each crystal extracted weakens the enchantment. If all are removed, she didn't need to complete the sentence. Understanding hung heavy in the air. Emma leafed through a few more pages of the diary, stopping at an image that showed a man next to a familiar symbol. "Wait, this emblem," she said, pointing to the drawing. "It's the same as Blake Mining's." Grandmother Sarah leaned in to see, and her face paled. "So that's it. History repeats itself," she murmured. "This man was Jerome Blake, Richard's ancestor." "Does that mean Richard knows the legend of the Titan?" asked Jack, alarmed. "Not only knows it," replied the elder, turning a few more pages, revealing texts that seemed written as a warning. "His ancestor tried to awaken it almost 200 years ago, believing he could control its power." "And what happened?" asked Lily, almost fearing the answer. "The Guardians of that time managed to stop him, strengthening the pact with a powerful ritual," explained Grandmother Sarah. "But the price was high. Several of them did not survive the effort." A heavy silence fell over the room. Outside, the wind increased its fury, and black clouds formed over the ridge. "Why would anyone want to awaken something so dangerous?" questioned Emma, perplexed. "Power," replied Jack simply. "It's always about power." Grandmother Sarah closed the book carefully. The diary mentions an ancient belief: whoever controls the Titan will control the elements, an almost divine power. Jerome Blake was obsessed with this, and it seems his descendant inherited more than just the name and fortune. Lily stood up suddenly, a new determination shining in her eyes. "Then we need to stop him. Perform the pact renewal ritual before—" "It's too late. The full moon is in 3 days," reminded Grandmother Sarah, "and we need all the Guardians gathered in the stone circle." "And the crystals that have already been removed?" asked Jack, concerned. The elder took a deep breath, her gaze meeting Lily's. "That's where our new human guardian comes in. Lily will need to recover at least one of them to restore the balance." "Me?" The girl's eyes widened. "How can I do that?" "With help," replied Grandmother Sarah, looking significantly toward the window, where Spirit was watching attentively, as if understanding every word of the conversation. At that moment, thunder echoed in the distance and a torrential rain began to fall. The lights flickered and went out, leaving them with only the weak illumination of a few candles that Grandmother Sarah quickly lit. "The storm has arrived earlier than expected," said the elder, her voice heavy with concern. "The Titan is stirring in its sleep. If Blake removes more crystals—" "We won't let that happen," stated Lily with a conviction that surprised even herself. In her pocket, the small fragment of blue crystal she carried began to pulse with a soft light, as if responding to her determination. Night fell over Eagleville as the storm increased in intensity. Lightning cut across the sky at increasingly shorter intervals, momentarily illuminating the Blake mining camp at the base of the ridge. Heavy machinery awaited dawn to continue the excavation work, and a few security guards patrolled the area under the protection of rain capes. At Jack's house, around the kitchen table illuminated by oil lamps, the group finalized the preparations for Lily's mission. "It's too risky," Jack protested for the 3rd time, his face marked by paternal concern. "She's just a girl." "A girl chosen by the Guardians," reminded Grandmother Sarah with gentleness but firmness. "The crystal responds to her as it doesn't to any of us." Lily, sitting silently, observed the blue fragment in her hand. Since she had decided to accept the mission, the stone shone more intensely, as if approving her courage. "I won't be alone, Dad," she finally said. "Spirit will be with me, and the other Guardians too." Emma spread a detailed map of the excavation, area on the table, obtained from Dr. Mitchell's files. "According to these reports, the extracted crystals are being kept in a container with a security system here." She pointed to a specific spot on the edge of the camp. "The good news is that there are only 2 guards in this sector during the night." "And the bad news?" asked Jack, crossing his arms. "Security cameras and motion sensors," replied Emma, adjusting her glasses, "but Dr. Mitchell included the access codes and information about the system's blind spots." "Thurston-san, it didn't seem like he expected us to use this information to invade the camp," commented Jack, suspicious. Maybe he knew exactly what we were planning, suggested Grandmother Sarah with a slight smile. There are more allies in this story than we imagine. The elder took from a small leather pouch some items, a handful of dried herbs wrapped in cloth, a necklace with a black stone, and a small vial containing a thick, dark liquid. To make Lily less visible to human eyes, she explained, handing her the necklace. It's not invisibility, little one, just inattention. People will tend not to notice your presence as long as you yourself remain discreet. Next, she offered the vial. And this is for Spirit, 3 drops in each eye before you leave. It will strengthen your special bond during the mission. Lily nodded, accepting the items with reverence. When should I leave? At midnight, replied Grandmother Sarah, looking at the old clock on the wall. At the hour when the veil between worlds is thinnest. You'll have about 3 hours before dawn and the change of the guard's shift. The plan was simple but risky. Lily, mounted on Spirit, would approach the camp from the west side, avoiding the main roads. With the help of the necklace and Spirit's special abilities, she would sneak in, locate the crystal container using the map, and recover at least one of them, ideally the largest she could carry. The fragment she already possessed would serve as a compass, guiding her to the other crystals through resonance. As the hour approached, Jack hugged his daughter tightly. "Promise me you'll be careful," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "I promise, Dad," replied Lily, feeling the weight of responsibility but also an inexplicable confidence. When it was 15 minutes to midnight, the rain diminished to a fine drizzle, as if nature itself was collaborating with the mission. Lily wore a dark waterproof cape, stored the magical items and the map in a small crossbody bag, and headed to the stable where Spirit waited, restless but determined. "Ready, friend," she whispered, applying the drops to the animal's eyes as Grandmother Sarah had instructed. The effect was immediate and impressive. Spirit's eyes momentarily shone with a bluish glow, and Lily felt an even deeper connection with the horse, almost as if she could perceive his thoughts. She mounted with agility, and after a last look at the house where her father, Emma, and Grandmother Sarah watched from the window, departed silently into the darkness. The nocturnal forest, normally intimidating, seemed to welcome her. Spirit advanced confidently among the trees, his hooves making almost no sound on the damp soil. At a certain point, Lily realized they weren't alone. Shadows moved among the vegetation, accompanying them. She recognized the silhouette of Luna, the mountain lion, silently gliding to her right, and the beating of Sky's wings above her head. Even River, the serpent guardian, could occasionally be spotted, her sinuous body reflecting the sporadic light of distant lightning. After about 40 minutes of riding, they reached the forest's edge. Ahead, the cleared area housed the mining company's camp, tents, machines, generators, and containers that served as offices and storage. Security lights illuminated the perimeter, and Lily could identify 2 guards making lethargic rounds, clearly bored and anxious to protect themselves from the persistent drizzle. "Let's go, Spirit," she whispered, placing the black stone necklace around her neck. "Now we're like shadows." The horse advanced cautiously. Following the map, they circled the main area, keeping to the shadows between the remaining trees. When they needed to cross an open space, Lily felt the power of the amulet. One of the guards looked directly in their direction, but his eyes seemed to slide without focus, as if he couldn't really see them. Finally, they reached the container marked on the map. A red light blinked above the door, indicating the active security system. Lily dismounted silently and, following Emma's instructions, entered the code provided by Dr. Mitchell on the small keypad. After a few tense seconds, the light changed to green, and the door unlocked with a metallic click. The container's interior was surprisingly organized. Metal shelves housed various equipment, documents, and most importantly, a series of small, locked black boxes. Lily took the crystal fragment from her pocket, which began to pulse more intensely, pointing toward the upper shelf. With her heart racing, the girl stacked some boxes to reach the top of the shelf. There, inside a padded case, rested a blue crystal the size of a tennis ball, much larger than her small fragment. When her fingers touched it, A current of energy ran through her body, and images flooded her mind, visions of the ridge, of the sleeping Titan, and of Richard Blake, his eyes shining with unbridled ambition as he held an ancient book very similar to the diary Grandmother Sarah had shown. "He knows," murmured Lily, suddenly understanding. "He knows exactly what he's doing." Carefully storing the crystal in her bag, Lily was preparing to leave when she heard voices approaching. She quickly hid behind some stacked boxes, and through the crack of the half-open door saw Richard Blake in person, accompanied by 2 men. "I want the main excavation to begin at dawn. I don't care what Mitchell says about additional analyses," he was saying, his voice laden with impatience. "The full moon is the day after tomorrow, and we need to have all the crystals extracted by then." Lily's heart raced as she remained hidden. Richard and his men had stopped just a few feet from the container. "Have the equipment for the ceremony arrived?" asked Richard, checking his wristwatch. "Yes, sir, they're in the main depot as requested," replied one of the men. "Excellent. 200 years later, a Blake will finally complete what my ancestor began," said Richard with evident satisfaction. "The power of the elements in the hands of someone who really knows how to use it." The men moved away, leaving Lily momentarily relieved, but with an even more urgent understanding of her mission. She waited a few minutes to ensure they wouldn't return and carefully left the container, silently closing the door behind her. Spirit waited patiently in the shadows, and Lily noticed that the animal guardians also remained vigilant around them. She mounted quickly, and following the same careful path as on entry, they began their retreat. They were almost reaching the safety of the forest when a guard unexpectedly appeared in front of them, illuminating them with a flashlight. "Hey! Who's there?" he shouted, momentarily confused by the vision partially obscured by Lily's amulet. It was at that instant that Luna, the mountain lion guardian, leapt in a golden blur, not to attack the man but to distract him, running in circles around him. The guard, startled, turned to follow the animal's movement, giving Lily and Spirit the opportunity to slip into the cover of the trees. As they rode back through the forest, now at a more accelerated pace, Lily felt the crystal in her bag vibrating with increasing intensity, as if responding to the proximity of the ridge. The animal guardians accompanied them closely, forming a protective escort. The return to the village was quicker than the departure. When they arrived at Jack's house, the first rays of sunlight were beginning to gild the horizon. Her father, Emma, and Grandmother Sarah anxiously awaited on the porch, clearly having not slept all night. "I got it!" announced Lily, dismounting from Spirit with an agile jump and displaying the blue crystal, which shone intensely in the morning light. "Thanks to the spirits," sighed Grandmother Sarah, examining the stone with reverence. "This is one of the largest fragments. It will significantly strengthen the ritual." As they entered, Lily reported everything she had seen and heard, including Richard's plans to start the main excavation that morning and his mention of the ceremony during the full moon. "He knows about the Titan, about the Pact, about everything," she concluded. "He's planning some kind of ritual of his own to control it." "A dangerous madness," commented Grandmother Sarah, shaking her head. "The Titan's power cannot be controlled by human ambition. We've seen this mistake before." "What do we do now?" asked Emma, checking her watch. "If the excavation starts this morning, how much time do we have before it's too late?" "We need to perform our ritual before him," replied the elder. "Originally, we planned to wait for the full moon, but we don't have that margin. We'll have to do it tonight with the moon almost full." "Will it be enough?" questioned Jack, concerned. Grandmother Sarah hesitated before responding. "It will have to be. With all the guardians gathered, the recovered crystal, and Lily's willpower, we have a chance." The following hours were of intense preparation. Emma used her knowledge of biology and local traditions to help Grandmother Sarah prepare the ritual elements. Jack, a practical man, ensured they had everything they needed for the night journey to the stone circle. Lily rested briefly, but her mind was restless with the weight of responsibility and with the visions that contact with the larger crystal had awakened. By evening, alarming news reached the village. Blake Mining's large excavators had begun opening a direct passage to the heart of the ridge, completely ignoring environmental protocols and pending licenses. The sky over the mountain had darkened unnaturally, with spiral clouds that seemed to converge at a specific point. "It's time," announced Grandmother Sarah, observing the signs. "The veil between worlds is tearing." The small group departed as the first stars began to appear in the sky. Spirit led the way, followed by Lily, Jack, Emma, and Grandmother Sarah, the latter mounted on a mule with steady steps. As they advanced into the forest, the animal guardians joined them. First Sky, the hawk, then River, the serpent, and finally Luna, the mountain lion, majestic and silent as a golden shadow. The path to the stone circle, which would normally take hours, seemed to magically shorten under Spirit's hooves. The trees seemed to move to make way, and time seemed to flow differently in the enchanted forest. When they finally reached the sacred clearing, the almost full moon hung directly over the ancient stone circle, bathing them with silver light. The ground vibrated subtly beneath their feet, and the air carried a scent of ozone, like before a great storm. "Take your positions," instructed Grandmother Sarah, descending from her mount. Each animal guardian took its place at a specific point in the circle. Emma, whom Grandmother Sarah had revealed to be a descendant of the ancient guardians of the air, positioned herself with Sky. Jack, representing the earth element, stood beside Luna. Grandmother Sarah herself, guardian of fire, occupied her ancestral place. And Lily, with the main crystal in her hands, headed to the center of the circle, where Spirit remained as her protector and link to the spiritual world. "Now, little one," Grandmother Sarah spoke softly, "place the crystal in the center and open your heart to the pact." With trembling but determined hands, Lily placed the blue crystal at the exact center of the circle. Immediately, the stone began to shine more intensely, emitting rays of light that touched each of the ancient carved stones. The symbols on the rocks, previously almost invisible under the moss of time, began to glow with their own light, as if awakening from a long sleep. "Feel the power of the earth under your feet," continued Grandmother Sarah, her voice assuming an almost hypnotic quality. "Feel the wind in your hair, the heat of fire in your blood, the fluidity of water in your thoughts. You are the spirit that unites all elements, Lily." The girl closed her eyes, letting the sensations flow. Her entire body tingled with an energy she had never experienced before. In her mind, images began to form, the ridge seen from within, tunnels and crystalline chambers, and at the center of it all, an immense and pulsating form, partially crystallized, breathing slowly in deep sleep. The Titan. Simultaneously, another image formed. Richard Blake in a different clearing on the slope of the ridge, performing his own ritual with the crystals he had extracted, reciting words from an ancient book, determined to awaken and control that primordial force. "He's trying." "Now," warned Lily, her voice sounding strangely distant to her own ears. "We need to strengthen the pact now." With an instinctive movement, she placed her hands directly on the crystal. A current of energy rose up her arms, and the words came naturally, as if they had always been inside her, waiting for this moment. "By the ancestral guardians, by the blood of the protectors, by the power of the united elements, I renew the sacred pact." A beam of blue light shot from the crystal into the sky, piercing the clouds that now spun rapidly over the clearing. The animal guardians emitted their characteristic sounds in unison, the mountain lion's roar, the hawk's cry, the serpent's hiss, and Spirit himself emitted a powerful neigh that echoed through the entire forest. The earth trembled, not violently, but as if adjusting to a new balance. In the depths of the ridge, the Titan stirred in its sleep, but the crystals around it shone more intensely, strengthening the invisible chains that kept it dormant. In the other clearing, Richard's ritual failed spectacularly. The crystals he had gathered exploded into luminous fragments, and the ancient book in his hands disintegrated into ashes. The businessman fell to his knees, stunned by the force he had underestimated. Back at the sacred circle, Lily felt a profound change in the air. The vibration of the earth calmed, and the sky began to clear, the stormy clouds gradually dissipating. The central crystal now pulsed with a constant and tranquil rhythm, like a heart at peace. "We did it," whispered Grandmother Sarah, a smile of relief on her wrinkled face. "The pact has been renewed." Lily felt a calmness invading her body. She looked at Spirit, who was watching her with what she could swear was a look of pride. The animal guardians approached the center, each touching the crystal briefly with its muzzle, beak, or scales before retreating. "What happens now?" asked Emma, approaching Lily. "Now the ridge is protected again," replied Grandmother Sarah, "and Richard Blake has learned a lesson that his ancestors ignored. Some forces were not meant to be controlled, only respected." Jack embraced his daughter tightly. "I'm proud of you, my little one, more than I can express." When the sun began to rise, tinting the sky with golden and pink hues, the group left the stone circle to return to the village. The crystal, now almost translucent, would remain there in the center of the circle, its power renewed to maintain the pact for many generations. On the descent, they spotted in the distance the Blake mining trucks hastily leaving the region. In the village, they would later discover that the company had undergone an emergency intervention by environmental agencies, anonymously alerted about serious violations in their operating licenses. "Dr. Mitchell fulfilled his part," commented Emma with a smile. Lily, mounted on Spirit, looked one last time at Eagle Ridge, majestic against the morning sky. She knew her life had changed forever. She was no longer just Jack's daughter. She was the new guardian of the pact, a responsibility she would carry with pride. And Spirit, her faithful companion, would always be her guide on this journey, just as the animal guardians would be her protectors, and Grandmother Sarah and Emma her mentors. Eagle Ridge would continue to guard its secrets, and they would continue to guard it, maintaining the balance between the world of humans and the ancestral forces that rested in its depths. A renewed pact to protect not just Eagleville, but the entire world from forces that should not be awakened.